Hello, everyone. Hope everyone had a great day. आप सबका दिन अच्छा रहा हो, ऐसी मेरी कामना है. Yeah, I'm trying to get more and more regular on this channel, and yeah, इसलिए कल भी आया था, आज भी मैं कुछ लेके आया हूँ. We are, I guess, for this episode, sort of back to our regularly scheduled programming. जिस प्लेलिस्ट से मैंने ये चैनल शुरू किया था, व्हाट आई कॉल द डेली डोज ऑफ न्यूज़. एक्चुअली बहुत दिन हो गए हैं कि ऐसा कुछ मैंने जैसे जेनेरिक से टॉपिक्स नहीं लिए हों. इट्स ऑल डीप डाइव. तो थोड़ा बोरिंग तो हो जाता है. I am thinking of some sort of, adding some sort of funny items to the episodes. But अभी वो थोड़ा दिमाग में चल रहा है, तो अभी उसमें थोड़ा टाइम लगेगा. But meanwhile, I would request everyone जो भी देख रहा है, please like, share, subscribe, comment कीजिए, बताइए आपको क्या अच्छा लग रहा है, क्या अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है. How can we improve? How can we make our voice be heard all over? But yeah, um, this is all a learning process, and the journey is as important as as where we land up at the end. So, mere liye, I have fun doing these lives. I have fun putting my opinions out there. I have fun in, analyzing topics, reading different involved papers that come out. And as a result of that, I decided to start this channel. So please support us in any way you feel appropriate. Chalo, guys, let's start today's topics. Actually, I have three main topics today, and as you probably noticed, there's going to be one which I'll discuss the most in detail. But first off, we'll just do some of the more relaxed ones. And you may find कि यार ये relaxed है, तो फिर serious वाला क्या होगा? Well, I'll explain why I have ranked these the way I have ranked them, right? क्योंकि I'm not saying any of these is less serious than the other. I don't think any of them is less important or more important. I just think that on this channel, we have been talking about some of these things earlier on as well. So, chali, let me get to the first one. This is a topic around Kennedy Center board votes to add Trump to venue's name. Performing Arts Center will be called Trump Kennedy Center. White House says unclear if board has the authority to actually change the name. Now, this is very near, what the core of Washington DC is. मतलब ये बिल्कुल अंदर है. This is in the center. This is near the White House, Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Memorial, and all these good things, right? So this is the center of performing arts. It's a big stadium. No, I guess not a stadium, but it's a big performing opera house. You can do plays there or whatever. General purpose center for the performing arts. Now it looks like President Trump wants his name attached to it in light of all the work that they're claiming he has been doing for the upkeep of this center, right? The center is, from what I understand, doing well as is. Plays, performances are still happening there. So I don't think it ever shut down or anything. But let's go over this one quickly. The Kennedy Center board, which has many members appointed by Trump, voted to rename the venue the Trump Kennedy Center. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Thursday on social media. Now, one thing to note here is this article is from the Wall Street Journal, which is supposed to be very, right leaning more often than not. So for them to come out with this article, it's quite interesting. See, my take on this is all global leaders who are able to stay in power for a long time. And in terms of the way the US works, every president only gets, up maximum of 2 terms. And this is President Trump's second term. All of them try to leave some sort of a legacy. One. So if you think about President Obama, it's probably Obamacare. Um, President Biden, okay, exiting Afghanistan. Doesn't matter how the media or how the world perceived it. They all want to be known for something. Now, this is President Trump's second term, and yes, he won't be allowed to contest again. So he's trying to leave a mark. Now, presidents do this in many ways, and not just US presidents, leaders all over the world. So I can speak about my birth country, India, where the international airport of New Delhi, the capital, is called Indira Gandhi International. Indira Gandhi was another long serving prime minister of India. Till now, the only female prime minister of India as well. Then there is a city in India called Hyderabad. The airport in that city is Rajiv Gandhi International. Rajiv Gandhi was another serving prime minister. He was unfortunately assassinated in 1990 or 1991, 1990, I believe. And again, he was actually the son of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. So there's an airport named after him. So that's sort of a way to know, okay, this person served the country. Here is something to remember him. Now, the person or the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, he has a university named after him, Jawaharlal Nehru University. It's literally called JNU. It's in the capital, New Delhi. So the current Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he has a cricket stadium named after him. So it's literally the Narendra Modi Stadium. And again, Narendra Modi Stadium is in Ahmedabad. I actually lived in Gujarat through the 3 terms that then Chief Minister Modi went through in Gujarat. So, this is not uncommon. The reason it's getting so much attention in the media is the same reason that everything to do with President Trump gets attention. There is in this particular context, I will use Trump because there is a personality called Donald Trump who is right now the president of the United States. Now, this is getting a lot of attention, in my opinion, because the personality Donald Trump has a way of, leaving his mark in whatever he does. We have to understand the whole business of the Trump family and the whole mindset of the person Donald J. Trump is using the name. They have always used their name, Trump Tower, right? Trump University. So they use their name. So now it's only natural that as a president, he's also looking to use his name in many places so that his presidency can be remembered. Whether we like it or don't like it, I think it is what it is. How it doesn't affect the daily running of the US in any way. It doesn't affect the daily running of any other country in the world in any way. So I think this is again for the news cycle. ये 2 दिन 3 दिन चलेगा and फिर ये बंद हो जाएगा क्योंकि realistically speaking फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि ये जो कैनेडी सेंटर फॉर परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट्स है इसका एक्चुअली नाम क्या होता है जॉन एफ कैनेडी का नाम है ऑलरेडी एंड सबको पता है ये जॉन एफ कैनेडी की प्रेसिडेंसी को commemorate करने के लिए बनाया है. Trump is basically saying, the person Trump is saying that I, as president of US, I'm focused on this section. Okay, put my name on it. तो ठीक है, मतलब again, this is for the news cycle, and typically this happens at the end of the year. A lot of the times there is not much happening, especially in the northern hemisphere of the world, where it's winter, ठंड पड़ रही है, लोगों को घर में रहने का मन कर रहा है, बाहर निकलने का वैसे ही मन नहीं करता. So typically the news cycle just sort of cools down. कुछ होता नहीं है तो फिर लोग they'll catch up to something. And obviously on the flip side, right, this administration is also known to communicate a lot on social media platforms. Again, I don't have an opinion on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? You get sick and tired of it, okay, you can stop your X notifications. You want to know what's happening, fine, turn them back on, right? If you have an iPhone, I use an iPhone, so just go to notifications. There's For every app, you have the ability to decide, do you want any notifications from the app or not. And now if you want to get more specific, then you'll have to go into the app. But personally, मुझे नहीं लगता कि ये इतना भी बड़ा कुछ है. I mean, ठीक है. It feels, I'll tell you, it always feels a little cringe when something like this happens on a sitting politician, like someone who's in their position currently. So a similar thing happened when when the cricket stadium got named after Prime Minister Modi. Everyone felt a little cringe कि यार ये थोड़ा ज्यादा हो गया. But at the end of the day, that stadium is still called what it's called. Cricket matches happened over there. Unfortunately, India also lost the bloody 50 over World Cup over there. मतलब ठीक है, things happen, things pass. I personally think of such kind of news almost as comic relief. Like, oh my God, something's getting blown out of proportion for maybe no reason. Like, again, this is one of those topics is primarily for the news cycle, and I'll make my case, right? Congratulations to President Donald Trump, likewise to President Kennedy, because this will be a truly great team long into the future. I don't know how President Trump and President Kennedy would be a great team because President Kennedy has already passed. Again, news cycle, right? Need something. It looks like Congress passed legislation 1964 naming the facility. So I guess if Congress passed legislation to name it something, then by that logic, Congress will have to pass another legislation to change the name. And that's why the original, heading of the article, that we don't know if the board can change it or not. So we don't know if it's going to get changed. What I found interesting was Democrats sharply criticized the name change, saying it would require an act of Congress. Fair, I can buy that, because when the initial naming happened, it required, a discussion in the Congress and it to be passed from the Congress. So I can understand that, okay, this time again, it needs to be passed by the Congress. But where at least I personally fail to see a relation is when leader Chuck Schumer says Trump was focusing on pet projects rather than high prices and affordability. At a time when costs are at an all-time high and Americans are paying more and getting less, Trump proves once again that he cares about his ego, not your family. I don't see the relation. This is the same thing that happens in India. India has a lot of poverty, no doubt. I think per capita GDP is maybe about 3,000, roughly speaking, maybe slightly above, slightly lesser, but that's a good rule of thumb number to go with. So then you'll have the opposition. Why is India sending a space mission to the moon and landing on the South Pole? चंद्रयान क्यों जा रहा है जब इंडिया में इतनी गरीबी? अरे भाई, बजट है उसका. गरीबी हटाने के लिए अलग schemes हैं. There are government schemes which are targeted towards alleviating poverty. And last year, India as a country alleviated extreme poverty. Anyway, like it's statistically proven. It's not Indian agencies reporting that, it's foreign agencies reporting that India has alleviated extreme poverty. And at the same time, India was able to send a moon mission to land on the south pole of the moon, the Shiv Shakti point. So when sure, American inflation is high. I don't know exactly. I'll just do a quick, you know, ask my best friend here. Actually, I'm curious now. Hmm. Let's see. Hmm, let me do a quick search, right? What's been the US inflation over 2025? Right? I'm just because I know Canada's has come down to about 2 on a year average. Yeah, so this is 2.7. The latest, this represented a decline. So, and here it's saying year on year, it's going from Jan, March, April to November. So you're in about, yeah, you are at about 2.5%, give or take. So 2.5% is in the middle of what the federal target is, but that is always supposed to be between 2 and 3%. Um, so again, if you're smack in the middle, I don't think you're doing that bad, right? So to make that argument that when costs are at an all-time high, costs always go up, they never really come back down unless you go into a deep recession like 2008. On average, you will have inflation of 2%. Now, costs of living go up because salaries don't keep up. And salaries don't keep up because either workers are not needed anymore, or they're able to find workers who just can do the job for, or companies can find workers, laborers, or any job doers who can do the job for lesser. So that's why cost of living seemingly goes up, because as a percentage of what your disposable income is, it's more of that is now going into just being able to live. Something that Canada has been suffering for some time. So I can speak to this, man. Like, you know, again, this is the same way opposition doing opposition politics just for the sake of opposition politics. I don't think of this as a good or a bad thing. Again, mostly for the news cycle. The reason I chose to cover it is my simple point here is the reason it's even here is because I think it's more to do with Trump the personality or Donald Trump the personality rather than President Donald Trump, president of the US. I think, uh, I mean, all the countries in the world have something named after their leaders. It becomes a little cringe when sitting leaders have something named after them. But again, I think more or less this is business as usual. Like nothing changes vis-a-vis the place. Yeah, one of some of your postcards may have to change. Some of your brochures, which might be kept inside this facility, they may have to change. But that's a materially insignificant cost to trying to curb costs of living in the largest economy in the world. Like iska koi matlab nahi ban raha hai statement ka. And if anyone, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to be corrected. I'm happy to be educated. I'm not able to see it, and that's my limited take here. The name change comes as his allies push to enshrine his legacy on other buildings. Earlier this month, the State Department renamed the U.S. Institute of Peace as the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace. Same breath, um, Trump told reporters he was honored and surprised by the move. Um, it's the same way as yeah, this is the same way as PM Modi also thanked the committee when they named the cricket stadium after him. I don't have anything more to say. I think we can safely just move on. I mean, Yeah, this will stay in the news cycle 2 3 days. Everyone will forget about it. Koi naya shagufa aa jayega. You know, let's focus on Santa's coming rather than you know a performing arts center being renamed. I think this was just a fun article to read, um, and the reason I found it fun to read is because it's not just now this is sort of evidence that this kind of stuff happens all over the world. It's not just um, limited to the limited to India or America, or it's just a broad spectrum. It doesn't matter the developing world or the developed world. Even in Canada, like Montreal's airport is named after former Prime Minister Trudeau's father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was also a Prime Minister of Canada. So happens, right? McDonald Cartier Airport is the one in Ottawa, um, and McDonald is, I believe, the first Prime Minister of Canada. So there is a university named after Wilfrid Laurier. He was another Prime Minister of Canada. So this is pretty normal. I don't, again, this is doing the news cycles because it's Trump, the personality, rather than President Trump, the president of US. Um, but again, this is a ubiquitous phenomenon. And today, after reading this article, I have a case, that this is not unique to the developing world or the developed world. It's just across humanity because all humans, regardless of race, color, gender, whatever, end up thinking in very similar ways. Everyone wants to leave a mark, a legacy of some sort, and they have their own ways of doing it. Some have maybe a bigger opportunity to be able to do it, like Donald J. Trump is the president of the US, or Narendra Modi is the prime minister of India, or Pierre Elliott Trudeau was the prime minister of Canada. They just had their chances. Um, and most people, unfortunately, don't get that. Again, it's not a right or a wrong thing. It's just normal human nature. You see the flowering of that nature in some individuals because of the position that's been afforded to them. And for most others, you don't get to see that. Anyway, I think I'll move to the next one. Chalo, let's remove this and let's stop the screen and I'll share it again. Let's move to the next one. Again, this is more of a light-hearted one only because we've been saying this on this channel for some time now. हम बोल रहे हैं बहुत टाइम से कि देखो भाई ये जो ट्रेड डील है यूएस कनाडा की ये कज़मा के बाद ही कुछ सेट होगा. From some of the articles I've seen today, Prime Minister Carney has said that CUSMA will be up for review from January. There'll be talks starting, and there will only be, a reasonable trade deal after that NAFTA agreement is renegotiated. Now, U.S. Trade Representative fires opening salvo in CUSMA review. We'll read the first line. Washington's trade representative says a coming review of the CUSMA trade deal will hinge on resolving concerns about Canadian policies on dairy products, alcohol, and digital services. So these are the long-standing concerns of the US vis-a-vis Canada. I don't think he has made a new statement here. He's regurgitated the US's position. Let's move on. In a statement this week to a congressional committee, US Trade Representative Jameson Greer said Americans have concerns about access to Canada's dairy market and Canada's export of certain dairy products. Now, as far as US having access to Canada's dairy market, see, I can speak from a personal experience and this is very unique to a person of Indian origin, and this could just be a coast to coast thing as well. But जब भी मैं US में, whenever I'm having chai in the US, US milk, US water, but the same tea leaf brand, versus whenever I have that same chai recipe prepared in Canada with Canadian milk and Canadian water, the taste is different. And I don't understand why. I'm actually going to try and do an experiment on this because I don't understand what the difference is. But whenever I have chai here in the Vancouver area, it just tastes different. It tastes richer. Same 3.25% milk. In fact, in the US, now Amul milk is available, which is 6%, which in Canadian parlance and normal North American parlance is actually light cream. It's 6% fat. But for some reason, it just doesn't taste like the chai that I was used to having in India. So personally, even if I start seeing a ton of American brands on Canadian shelves, I will still go and buy the Canadian one just because the chai is better. And I'm used to it. Like my body digests it. I've been having it for 5 years. So I'm gonna try this. I have a bunch of friends in Seattle, so I can always just go and you know do that experiment, right? Just buy that milk from uh, Costco, the Amul milk from Costco, and then make the chai, same chai in Seattle, and see if it's just the water, right? And I'll take Canadian milk also. I know, I'll declare it and I'll be like, yeah, I have like, take half a gallon or 2 liter, just go and make chai, same chai in Seattle and then same chai in Vancouver and see if the taste is any different. Because I don't think if, yeah, some people may actually switch over to the US brands, but as we have seen since the tariffs were put on Canada, जब से ये tariffs आए हैं Canada पे, and the fact that Canada actually pretty much halted all reciprocal tariffs, you are still seeing the Canadian brands surviving just fine. In fact, I just did a long live yesterday on the Canadian Grocery Code of Conduct. It's something to try and protect the suppliers. So it looks like, I mean, there is a need to protect suppliers because retailers are being able to get what they want from suppliers and not give back what the suppliers are asking for, right? So that means the Canadian supply chains are still going strong. There might be some spots in that chain which might not be quote unquote fair, but and that's what that grocery code of conduct is trying to address. But what I'm saying is, as far as the dairy market is concerned, I highly doubt that Canada will face or Canadian producers will face a big issue, even if a US product comes in. Yeah, they will have to become more competitive. It is too expensive. It is very expensive. Canadian dairy market, Canadian dairy products are quite, um, yeah, they have a pretty high price tag, so they may have to get more competitive on it. But um, I don't think they'll lose their customer base that easily. This is my personal opinion based on my chai experiences, so I can understand ki it may not apply to everything across the board because you use dairy for a lot of things. But again, this is my take. Greer also pointed to the effect of Canada's Online Streaming Act and Online News Act on US digital service providers, as well as procurement measures in Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. See, I'm okay if the US has some sort of an issue with the Online Streaming Act. At the end of the day, digital service providers, uh, they should be. I personally don't have a problem with the American digital service providers being allowed in Canada. But I don't know how US is going to convince procurement measures in Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia to be reversed in any way. Like, At the end of the day, the provinces have the right to decide on what they want to procure, how they want to procure it. The harsh reality is that, again, we get to the meat of this argument, right? कि यहाँ पे इन्होंने लिखा हुआ है कि he also cited concerns about provincial bans on the distribution of American alcohol that came in response to a barrage of US tariffs on Canada following the re-election of President Donald Trump. So again, this goes back to procurement measures by the province, right? One of the biggest things the Canadian provinces procure is alcohol. Each province has its own alcohol distribution body, and any private mom pop shop that wants to sell alcohol, even the small chains and everything, they have to procure from the provincial body. Again, we can debate till the cows come home that if this is a good or a bad thing. I personally think it's a bad thing. I'm quite comfortable to admit that. But the fact of the matter is it's gonna stay like this for the foreseeable future. I don't see it changing. And again, I'll be very clear. I don't even see it changing if for example, if the Conservative Party comes in, right? I don't see it changing whatsoever. Because again, I I will go back to the example of India, right? India also has licensed government shops to buy alcohol. And trust me, the government never gets out of the alcohol business. If they have it, they're going to bloody keep it. So, the second point here is that at the end of the day, the Canadian provinces are customers of alcohol, US alcohol, South American alcohol, its own Canadian alcohol. So every customer has a right to buy whatever they want from wherever they want. If they don't want to buy US alcohol, I don't understand what 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 cards will the US play vis-a-vis those items, right? Now, as a country, US has put tariffs on Canada, and the provinces are reacting in a way saying, okay, you can put tariffs on us, we'll just not buy your booze. So this would be, at least from the US perspective, this would be a challenging aspect of the CUSMA negotiations. Keeping also another sort of fact that has come out that at least as of now, the IMF, let me see, इसको officially क्या कहते हैं? Let me take a quick look. Yeah, so the IMF concluding statement of 2025 Article 4 mission, which is the statement on Canada for this year, it is basically, and I'm going to do a deep dive on this on the 24th, but it is basically saying Canadian economy has not done as badly under US tariffs as expected. It clearly calls that out, and I will show those statements. Now, it also calls out that, okay, a lot of it is because Canada decided to do away with its retaliatory tariffs for the most part, and because of all the CUSMA exemptions in place. But also the CUSMA exemptions, some benefit the US and then some benefit Canada. So only time will tell where this will land, and we'll have to monitor all the CUSMA negotiations that happen. But needless to say, any sensible trade deal between US and Canada will only come into practice after CUSMA is negotiated. That'll essentially be the trade deal. There won't be anything. I don't think there'll be another label given to it. There might be changes in how that deal gets renegotiated, but overall, I don't think the label will change in any way. I'm not going to go into the grievances the US has with Mexico. I don't understand the economy at all. So udhar मैं अपना मुंह बंद रखूंगा. Greer said his office will engage. Okay, bilateral basis. Okay, fine. This is where I have a problem with the Canadian way of thinking. Straight up. Carney said Canada has been clear about its intention to protect the supply management of agricultural products. To be clear, this article is from a Canadian source, Toronto Sun. Um, and yeah, my opinion on this is Canada has to do away with supply management. This is basically quotas. And supply management is another way of saying, at least to a person of Indian origin, it's another way of saying license Raj, right? And for the longest time, while India had such restrictive policies, the only thing it ever did um, was give rise to corruption, was give rise to a less competitive economy. I'm not going to claim that Canada has become overly corrupt because of its supply management, but again, it does make the Canadian manufacturer less competitive because there is no incentive to produce over a certain amount. There's no incentive to get more efficient. And whether we like it or not, human nature is if there is no incentive, nothing's going to happen. तुम कुछ encouragement नहीं दोगे तो वो कुछ नहीं करेंगे यही होता है time and again this has been proven the more the government tries to get in the business of doing business the less competitive that country gets we all know what happened to the Soviet Union complete centralized control just fell apart right India while it was pursuing all of its controlling policies you know centrally managed economy it wasn't doing that well growing at what 2% and now the latest quarter after 50% tariffs from the US it grew at 8% latest quarter the quarter before that was about 7.8 and that's primarily and I mean a lot of work has been done in India to make it less reliant on the government yeah there are socialist schemes happening for the economically less privileged, but Canada is not a country that suffers from that. Canada is a developed country. People have a decent standard of living out of the box. Most people do, not all, I agree. But Canada is not a country where supply management of any type of products is needed. Let the market do its thing. All the government should be doing is an example of that is the grocery code of conduct. Build the framework but don't try to tell your producers your buyers your sellers to how to do their job they'll figure that out it's their job to do that that's my take on this yeah they'll continue to stand by that and I personally feel if they stick to supply management of agricultural products any yeah it'll be very difficult to get a good a good trade deal with the US. This is going to be one of the biggest sticking points of the US. And yeah, it's gonna make it very difficult to renegotiate CUSMA on the same terms as we have right now. We'll, now let's see. We will enter those discussions on the review of CUSMA in that spirit. Carney said Ottawa sees tremendous benefits for Canada and the US in pooling resources where possible, for example, in the auto, steel, aluminum, and forest product sectors. See, the harsh reality is, in terms of forest product, the US has a fair amount of its own forest. They can substitute. I know for a fact a lot of big Canadian lumber companies have huge operations in the US just because at one point doing lumber business in BC just became too unprofitable. The laws became so restrictive that they said, okay, we'll just exit, screw it. They have some sawmills running, but they were already having to replant more than what they were cutting, and the laws got even more crazy. So they said, okay, fine, can't do it. I'm going to move to the States. Typically, the southern states offer a lot of opportunities, very business friendly, and lots of forest cover. Now, auto, steel, and aluminum. So I do feel Canada will continue to have some sort of a edge in auto, just because even though, yeah, we have seen some companies move operations across the border, um, the exchange rate will be favorable for auto parts to be built in Canada and then exported to the US. We are hovering at around 1.37. So I would say that there would be some benefits for the US companies to keep their operations in Canada. Um, Steel and aluminum, same story. I would say the exchange rate, even though as a Canadian consumer in the US, whenever I visit, I feel the pinch, but from an export perspective, that definitely helps. And to my knowledge, I don't know if there's a huge revival of steel and aluminum production. Let's see this, right? Hmm. Just So I'm just going to get some quick stats on the largest steel and aluminum producers in the world. So let's see. I don't want companies. I just want countries. Can I get the list by countries? Let's get a quick understanding on where the US stands, right? Top steel producing countries: China, India, Japan. US is fourth, Russia, South Korea, Turkey, Brazil, Iran. Okay, interestingly, Canada is not even there. Let's see for aluminum. Aluminum, US is not on this list of top 10. So I guess in terms of steel, the US will be able to um, maybe ramp up its capacities. Other notable producers, so the list does say Vietnam, Italy, Taiwan, Indonesia, Mexico, Canada, France. Yeah, for aluminum, it doesn't really give me that. So what Canada may have to do in that case is find other buyers for its steel. A good market would have been India because of the amount of development it's going through. But again, India is the second largest producer of steel by itself anyway. So in terms of steel, okay, I do see some headwinds for Canada. For aluminum, okay, so for aluminum, Canada is at fourth, and the US is not on this list. So let's say in terms of aluminum, Canada may have some bargaining chips. That's my analysis. Chalo, let's go down. I think this article is done. So with that said, I actually want to get to the most, in my opinion, what the most important article for today is. And let's see, stop the screen share. Okay, I'm gonna start sharing this one. Yeah. Now, this to me is the most interesting one among all the topics I wanted to discuss today. And the reason for this is this is this is a very bold step by Australia. No ifs, no buts about this. This is a very bold step. We have been seeing such things happen in other countries. India banned TikTok. Canada has restrictions on what you can see on Facebook, what news you can see, blah blah blah. The whole Digital Subscriptions Act that we just saw, digital services. Sorry. This is the first time, but most of the time, a lot of this gets framed around national security or taxes, right? Australia, Australia's unique take is that they have done it only for teens under 16. The new law is meant to make things safer online, but UNICEF Australia believes the real fix should be improving social media safety, not just delaying access. I'll get into what I think about that, but let's. This is going to be a little long, guys. ये थोड़ा लंबा चलेगा, तो अगर आपको break लेना है तो आप अभी ले लो. But I'm going to talk about this for a bit because I'm going to read through all the things. This summary is again coming straight from UNICEF Australia. Like ये और कहीं से कोई news article नहीं. This is about as unbiased as you can get. So what is the social media ban? The Australian थोड़ा चलो इसको बड़ा करते हैं. Yeah, the Australian government passed a new law called Online Safety Amendment Bill on 28 November 2024. This law introduces a mandatory minimum age of 16 for accounts on certain social media platform. It came into effect about a week ago, 10 December. Parents cannot give their consent to let under 16s use those platforms. There are certain apps and certain social media platforms that have been banned. We will see those names. They'll be coming up. Why is it happening? The government says the social media ban is needed to protect the mental health and well-being of Australian children and teens. They believe the risks of social media, such as cyberbullying, harmful content, and online predators, outweigh the positives. There is actually a documentary, or I guess a docu-series on Netflix, which covers how one mother, she started a social media channel with her daughter and then just pulled in a lot of the neighborhood kids, made a whole platform out of them, promised them money, huge scam that happened. I think this was, again, I think this was a US case, but I could be wrong. So I don't think overall, from what I understand, is I don't think the Australian government is wrong in their thinking. अब इनके हिसाब से शायद 18 is the age of being an adult, or maybe 16, but I think their heart is in the right place, and I would support it, even though I am doing this podcast or doing this live session on a platform myself. But whenever I put out a live, I always say that, okay, this content is not made for kids. It's not necessarily always not allowed for children under 18 because I don't use any expletives on my channel. So at least I try not to. So I don't think anything is that harmful. I will always try to have a balanced opinion, but I always say clearly that, okay, this is not targeted and meant for kids in any way. You got to have a little bit of adult intellect to be able to watch my videos. So they highlight things like cyberbullying, harmful content, online predators. Yes, all these things are a huge reality of social media. मतलब इसमें आप कुछ कर नहीं सकते हो, ये है. And at such a malleable age, especially maybe the age up to 21, 22, where every little stimulus that pops into your sphere, you suddenly feel that you should react to it. It can lead to a lot of long-term harm, in my opinion. Think of it as a rubber band, right? अब एक rubber band है, अभी वो इस तरह से stretched है. Then something else shows up on social media. It completely goes this way, goes that way. The whole day it goes up and down, up and down. It'll break at some point. I mean this figuratively. I mean this in terms of mental health. God forbid someone may do some stupid activities as well, right? it's a very it's a very tender age. You can be influenced very easily. You tend to take everything you see online as reality. I think that is reducing over time. Like my cousins, when they were growing up, they grew up with the iPhones and the iPads and all the other devices. So they have, I would say, they got that understanding a lot earlier in their life. So I guess that's why it's 16 and maybe not 18 or 21. But I would still say this. I support this step because you, bef- up until the age of 16, I would say your main focus should be, developing your base in such a way that you can then build up on whatever skill set you identify for yourself, make a profession out of it, go on to do big things in life. But if at such a young age you are bombarded with so much stimulus, um, then it'll take a very long time to sort out all of that confusion. And this is a this is a positive scenario. This is the benign end of the spectrum, that it'll just take a very long time to sort out of that confusion and then eventually figure out what you're meant to do. The worst case scenario is unthinkable. So I support the decision overall, and I also support the reasons that they have highlighted over here. What social media platforms? So again, it says YouTube, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Reddit, Twitch, Threads, and Kick. Of course, I know YouTube as a platform. X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Reddit, Twitch. So what I feel they have done is any platform where you have access to instant gratification content, quote unquote, all the scrollable stuff, it looks like they're banning that. Right? Apps like Messenger, Kids, WhatsApp, Kids, Helpline, Google Classroom, YouTube Kids are expected to not be a part of the ban. So anything that is going to put out kid-friendly content, they're not going to ban that. Google Classroom is going to stay on. YouTube Kids will stay on. So in fact, YouTube is not entirely going away. It's just no adult content. So, for instance, this video would probably not be available in Australia, and I'm okay with that. Like, it's okay. Um, Currently, yeah. So, again, X, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitch, Snapchat, TikTok, all of them are designed in such a way to keep you onto the application as long as possible. That's the model that these companies use to make money. I don't think there's anything wrong with that model, but I do think that for kids below 16, or maybe even in my case, kids below 18, if I had to put a number, um, it can have long term effects which are, well, frankly, devastating. Now, my issue is tech companies that own these platforms could face fines of up to $50 million if they don't take reasonable steps to stop under 16s from having accounts. मतलब कंपनी क्या करेगी इसमें? ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा they can try and say, okay, please check if you are under 18, please check a box. Now you can say that, okay, there will be an ID scan. आप ड्राइवर्स लाइसेंस स्कैन करोगे, अभी 16 साल के इंसान को तो ड्राइवर्स लाइसेंस भी शायद नहीं होगा. Okay, maybe you can say passport scan, or maybe there's just a state ID, province ID, whatever they call their administrative units in Australia. So the harsh reality is you can get fakes of those. Maybe it's more, I don't know how easy or difficult it is in Australia to get a fake ID, but uh, I'm pretty sure you could, right? And kids at that age, even adults, but kids especially at that age, if you tell them ये नहीं कर सकते हो, वो जाके करने की कोशिश करेंगे. अगर उन्हें फेक आईडी लेना होगा वो जाके ले लेंगे और वो अपना अकाउंट बना पाएंगे। कब कितनों को आप पकड़ोगे, कितनों को जेल में डालोगे, कितनों पे फाइन डालोगे, राइट? Up to $50 million you want to find the tech companies. See, I'm not saying tech companies should not take responsibility. They should take some responsibility. But I would say a better way, in my opinion, to try and implement this would be to put a fine on the kids in some way. Now, 16-year-olds, they don't make money. So, okay, you can't put a monetary fine on them. Maybe they should get, maybe they should be required to do some community service. Maybe they should be required to, a little small punishment of some sort. Maybe it stays on their record for 6 months and then goes away. I don't know. I don't know what the right way to maybe discipline a 16-year-old would be. But I would say the onus of this also lies on the parents and the kids themselves. Maybe the parents can get a monetary fine for not monitoring their kids' online presence in some way. But the kid himself, herself, or whatever self should also feel that they did something incorrect. That's my limited point here. उनको लगना चाहिए कि हमने कुछ गलत किया है, ये हमारे लिए इस उम्र पे सही नहीं है। तभी वो उस चीज को इम्बाइब कर पाएंगे और तभी वो आगे की जनरेशन्स को इससे डिस्करेज करेंगे, राइट? उन्हें याद आएगा कि व्हेन आई वाज 15 I got sent to do 10 hours of community service because I had a YouTube account which I wasn't allowed to have at that time. If you give someone an experience of some sort, that is way better in allowing someone to remember that point rather than just saying हम कंपनी पे फाइन लगा देंगे। कंपनी पे आपको फाइन लगाना है नहीं लगाना है, that is the Australian government's take. They can decide how companies should behave in their country. I would also say that a little bit of there should be some sort of a consequence, maybe a small one for the kids so that they remember and then they help in perpetuating that to the future generation. Chaliye, let's go up. Let's go down. Sorry, social media platforms. How will social media platforms know? Social media platforms are offering a number of options to work out your age, including estimating your age based on a photo or a video. They may also give you the choice to use an ID, but they have to offer an alternative. Again, yeah, you'll basically get, I would say, 90% of the cases. If you have AI deciphering your age through a photo or a video, and then at times you can also build in, okay, make sure it's not a fake ID. There are some markers. But again, this is going to be very negative reinforcement oriented in that sense. For doing something incorrect, the kid does not face anything, or the parents don't face anything. And it's just left to the companies to decide. The companies will do their best. They would want to continue to do business in Australia. It's a developed country, high disposable income people. They will take subscriptions. So I'm pretty sure the companies want to stick around in Australia. But I think in the long term, for this policy to be self perpetuating, that it doesn't feel like a law or a policy to abide by, it just feels like it's the right thing to do. There should be some way to vet out who has sort of bypassed the whole system, and then maybe a little consequence for them, even if it's a young kid. And it does not, again, it does not have to be punitive. It just has to be, it just has to serve as a small reminder. What will happen to me if I have an account? It's up to the tech company that owns the platform to create systems to ensure those under 16 can't create or keep social media accounts. This means there won't be fines or penalties. Yeah, again, that's the point I'm trying to make. No consequence for the young people and their families. There should be something. It need not be harsh or extremely punitive, but there needs to be something. What does UNICEF Australia think? While it's great we're talking more about improving the online world for young people. UNICEF Australia thinks that the changes won't fix the problems young people face online. Social media has a lot of good things like education and staying in touch with friends. We think it's more important to make social media platforms stay safer and listen to young people to make sure any changes actually help. That's why we are including young people's opinions when we are talking to the government about making online spaces as safe as they can be. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know what I think about that. I mean, UNICEF Australia thinks that social media has a lot of good things. I don't think the Australian government is denying that. In fact, when we go up, as far as their own summary is concerned, they are saying that they believe the risks outweigh the positives. So they are already cognizant of the positives, right? They are just saying that the negatives for the younger audience just outweigh. So when they say that social media has a lot of good content or good things like education and staying in touch with friends, well, WhatsApp is going to stay around. So the staying in touch with friends is pretty much taken care of. And that to friends anywhere in the world, right? You just, yeah, WhatsApp. With WhatsApp, you can connect with anyone all over the world. Call them up, video call them, send them text messages, send them attachments, everything. Education. What are the schools there for? What are the universities there for? What are the libraries there for? And now everyone will say, oh, okay, do you want the kid to go have 5 books, textbooks in their backpack? No, I'm fine with PDFs. Most libraries in the world today offer online access to books. I am a member of the Vancouver Public Library system where there are ebooks available. And with your library card number, you can log in and you can access the book. So I find this argument half baked. Yes, YouTube can have content which can be very educative. It can be used for education. I have used it myself. But again, a university student will typically have access to all the education that they need for their degree through the libraries, through the notes the professors give, etc., etc. And the same thing at a school level, right? I personally feel this argument is a little half baked. Um, you should include young people's opinions, but again, it's like saying ki, it's like saying that okay, you're trying to maybe discipline your kid in some way, saying okay, uh, half an hour timeout, you can't watch television because you watched too much today. Now asking a kid that are you okay with that kind of a punishment is like, you know, no, the kid is obviously going to say that no, I don't want that, I want to watch more TV. So this comes as a double-edged sword. Um, the opinions that you get from the young people in this case will have to be taken with a grain of salt. That's just my opinion on it. I'm not saying don't take them. I'm just saying please understand you're asking for the opinion of the very set of people for whom you're trying to put a ban in place. A ban is always seen as a negative thing. It more often than not is a negative thing. It comes across as, okay, I will lose access to something. And as I was mentioning earlier about human psychology, especially in younger audiences, आप उनको बोलोगे कि ये नहीं करना है, वो ही करेंगे. उनका मन करेगा. It's nothing wrong. It's just, okay, why are you restricting me to do this? I want to try it out. So just, yeah, please take that with a huge grain of salt. That's my limited take on that. Okay, let's see what else. Oh, chalo, we are at the end of this, guys. So thank you very much for watching today. And thank you very much for whoever watches this in the future. For the last time today, I'm gonna put this one. Please like, share, and subscribe, and do let us know what other type of content you would like to watch. हमें बताइए, comments दीजिए, गाली दीजिए, subscribe कीजिए, हमारी आवाज़ लोगों तक पहुंचाइए. Thank you and have a great rest of the day from wherever you're watching in the world. Chalo, bye bye.